Hey there, all my picker friends out there. Mountain Man Picker here. I'm in my Mountain Man cave, just sipping on a cold one, and wanted to share with you guys and gals my top 12 albums that have totally transformed my life. And go ahead and grab you something to drink and kick back and relax, because we're going to chat for a little while. And I hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please remember to like and subscribe. I also welcome all of your comments. So anything you want to comment on, good or bad, I read them all. So let's get started. I'm going to start it kind of in chronological order of when each of these albums really touched my life. And the first one I'd like to talk about is none other than the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. This album here came out in 1956, and my first memory of hearing rock and roll, and I'm a rocker, I love all kinds of music, but I've always been a rocker, and this was the first record I think I ever heard that had rock music, you know, some boogie woogie, soul, rock, rhythm and blues, that kind of stuff. It was right here on this album. And this album right here, I hold it near and dear to my heart because I remember my parents playing Elvis constantly when I was growing up. And this was an album that they played all the time. I think I have about 3 or 4 copies of this record. It's getting harder and harder to find the original albums, and you can see this one's got a little bit of wear and tear on it. But the vinyl that I have here is in really good condition. It's at least a VG, maybe even a VG plus. But Blue Suede Shoes, I'm counting on you. I Got a Woman. That's a really cool song. You know, put in the comments what you think about the king, about Elvis Presley. How has he changed your life? Well, I can tell you, this album changed my life because that's when I first started getting into rock music. And I was just a little lad, just a wee little guy when I first heard this. So that's number 1 of the 12 albums we're going to look at, Elvis Presley. Okay, number 2, and it's actually the number 2 album, or at least named number 2 album by the Beatles. All right, I grew up listening to the Beatles. Shortly after I heard Elvis, the Beatles were constantly being played in my household. This is the Beatles' second album. It came out in 1964, the same year I was born. And I have such good memories of this record. My brothers and I, we would actually pretend that we had a band, and or that we were even in the Beatles, and we would, you know, sing along and play instruments that weren't really there, you know, tennis rackets, whatever we could find, a fake microphone, and we pretended that we were in the Beatles. And I listened to this album hundreds, probably thousands of times actually when I was growing up. The first time I heard Roll Over Beethoven by, you know, George Harrison's version of it, man, I was floored. I was like, gosh, I've got to learn how to play the guitar someday. This is an awesome song. And he did a fantastic job in the Beatles of playing that song, Roll Over Beethoven. Thank You Girl, You Really Got a Hold on Me, Devil in Her Heart, Money, You Can't Do That. That's all on side 1. The whole side rocks. So then side 2, we got Long Tall Sally, I Call Your Name, Please Mr. Postman, I'll Get You, and of course their big hit, She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah. I'm sure everybody remembers that song. So put in the comments, what do you think about this record? I've got all the other Beatles records too, almost. I'm collecting many of those albums, and I'm on my way to having every single one. Even the rare, hard to find bootleg copies, I'm hunting those down as well. So you might see that on one of my videos coming up, or in the past. I do have a few where I pick some Beatles. Beatles' second album, that's my number 2. All right, the 60s were a really cool time. I remember it very well, even though I was quite young. But another album that came out in the 60s, 1969, that really turned me on to folk rock, you know, acoustic guitar rock when I was growing up were these guys right here, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. This album came out in 1969. This is kind of a rough copy that I'm holding here. It's got some wear and tear on it, but I've got about 4 of these, and I've got a couple that are in mint condition. And I still listen to this all the time. I mean, we got Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, we've got Marrakesh Express, Guinevere, really cool song. Love every song on this album. Wooden Ships and Helplessly Hoping. And let's see what else we got on here. Woodstock, I think, is on here. No, Woodstock's on a different record. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Sorry about that. But this is an awesome album. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about Crosby, Stills and Nash 1969 Gatefold album. Still listen to this one all the time. Okay, let's see what's next. We've got album number 4. Hey guys and gals, just for the record is brought to you by All About Guitar Academy. You can find All About Guitar Academy on YouTube, or if you want to learn how to play the guitar in 6 weeks or less, go to allaboutguitaracademy.com. Okay, album number 4. You might be surprised at this one, and I don't know how you feel about this one. It's not like a rare record. It's not an expensive record. Pretty easy to find. But man, was I blown away the first time I heard this band. When I first heard them play Slow Ride, I knew I had to get a guitar and start learning how to play immediately. I think I was 12 years old when I first heard this. 1977 release, Foghat Live. How many of you still listen to this? Probably not a whole lot. I still like to listen to it from time to time. This album blew me away. Totally changed my whole viewpoint of rock and roll, boogie woogie. I mean, Slow Ride, I Just Want to Make Love to You, Honey Hush, Road Fever, a rockin' song. I mean, this whole album rocks. Home in My Hand, Lonesome Dave and Rod Price, they became my heroes overnight when I first heard Slow Ride. But I didn't get any Foghat albums till I got this one. And this is the one that blew me away, totally changed my life. I've got all the Foghat albums and I've seen them. I actually saw them live in 1980 for the first time. No, it was 1979. And they played all the songs on this album. Saw them with Pat Travers. He's still around, by the way. Another one of my heroes on guitar. But Foghat Live, that got me on the road to learning how to play the guitar. Probably the first song, aside from the album that I've got coming up here in a minute, that I learned on the guitar. Slow Ride was probably the second one. So anyway, Foghat Live. All right, so another band that I grew up on listening to that really changed my life, in addition to Foghat, as far as playing rock guitar and hearing things on the radio every day. I mean, man, we had some good radio stations back in the day. And this was a band that was always on the radio in the 70s and had a hit, Smoke on the Water. Remember that song? That was the first song I learned how to play on guitar. You know, it's probably a no-brainer, but Deep Purple, Machine Head. What an awesome rockin' album. I mean, Highway Star, Smoke on the Water. And I would say my favorite song on this album is probably Space Truckin'. The first time I heard Space Truckin', I was totally blown away. And I really was getting into rock and roll by this period of time. Totally changed my life. Deep Purple, Machine Head. There's a really cool story and some really good documentaries out there too on what Smoke on the Water was really about. I'm not going to get into it on this video, but if you don't know about that, check it out. Smoke on the Water, what it was written about. All right, it has to do with Frank Zappa and some other cool dudes. So Deep Purple, Machine Head, that is one of the albums that definitely changed my life. All right, coming up, the next one. Okay, let's go back to 1971. You might be able to guess which one this one. This is a really, really popular album. Got a lot of radio airplay. Still very popular today. I think I have about 6 or 7 copies of this record. I've got UK pressings. I've got a German pressing and several US pressings. But still listen to it all the time. I'm sure you probably do too if you like rock and roll. Who's Next by The Who. Awesome record. I mean, if you've never heard this album, you've been missing out. I mean, we've got all the hits on here. Baba O'Reilly, They Call That a Bargain. Bargain is on here. Love Ain't for Keeping, My Wife's Song Is Over, Getting in Tune, Going Mobile. Pete Townshend sings on that tune. And Behind Blue Eyes, man, what an awesome song that's on this record. And then finally, Won't Get Fooled Again. There's not a single song on this record that sucks. They're all good. And love Who's Next. I'm always looking for more copies of it out there. There's plenty of them to find, but some of these can be really valuable if you get certain pressings. This one that I have right here is the one I listen to all the time. But like I said, I've got several other copies that are worth a little bit more dough. I'll probably keep them forever, pass them on down. But Who's Next by The Who. And if you don't know what they're doing on the cover here, you have to look that up as well. Pretty cool little story about how that picture came about. All right, next. All right, I should say who's next. Well, I'll tell you who's next. Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic. Let me know what you think about this record. What it means to me is this was about the period of time that I was getting into high school, or before high school actually, 1975. Yeah, that's when it was, 1975. And Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic, it totally changed my life. One of the neighborhood kids in the neighborhood came over and he showed me his brother's record. Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic, had Walk This Way, big radio hit on it. But when I heard Adam's Apple, I was totally blown away. What an awesome guitar song. Joe Perry, Brad Whitford, amazing guitar players, underrated as heck, in my opinion. But this album changed my life. I was an Aerosmith fan the minute I heard this record. Walk This Way is what really got me into Aerosmith, but once I got this album, it totally changed everything. Started getting into some hard and heavy rock after that. And so that brings us to our next album, which actually, this one changed my life because it's not a hard and heavy hard rock album. But this was in my high school years. I really got into The Doors. I mean, this album came out in 1967, but I really started getting into The Doors during my high school years. And I won't get into all the reasons why we were listening to The Doors, but my goodness, totally blew my socks off the first time. I mean, I'd already heard The Doors. My parents, I'd heard them playing Light My Fire and, you know, different tunes like that, hearing them on the radio. But when I got this record, Break On Through and Soul Kitchen, I mean, everything on here is great. You got Light My Fire, you've got Backdoor Man, and one of my favorite songs from this album was The End. Very controversial song, but you know, awesome. This is when I really started getting into more psychedelic rock and roll, and Jim Morrison was pretty psychedelic dude. And this album is probably the one that changed my life after hearing it as far as The Doors goes. I've got all the Doors records. This is one of my favorites. How about you? Speaking of psychedelic rock, and you know, I call it psychedelic. Roger Waters, he'll tell you there was nothing psychedelic about it at all, but I'm not sure I believe that. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. I remember when I first got, now this is not the original album, of course, this is a remastered version. I lost my original Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, but we would listen to this album over and over and over. And I'm sure some of you out there, you know, still hold this album near and dear to your hearts as well. It's such a good musical record. I mean, the whole album is like a masterpiece, in my opinion. And, you know, if you play this with The Wizard of Oz, it's kind of synced with it. If you haven't tried that yet, look that up as well. It's pretty cool. But regardless, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. We used to listen to this record all the time, still like to hear it today, and that's definitely one of the albums that changed my life. Pink Floyd, they're awesome. Okay, so after things started getting a little psychedelic, a little bit of hard rock, I was also starting to get into what we call progressive rock. And one of my favorite bands, still to this day, progressive rock and roll, is Yes. And this is probably the album that got me really started into my Yes journey. Fragile. It's got the hit Roundabout on it, and this is a really good copy that I've had for quite a while. I've played it several times, but it's got so much good stuff on it. Like I mentioned, Roundabout. You've got South Side of the Sky, one of my favorites, and then 5% for Nothing, Long Distance Runaround. That's an awesome tune, awesome tune. And The Fish with Steve Howe playing his acoustic guitar solos on there, Mood for a Day. And then finally, Heart of the Sunrise with all of the drums and Christopher Squire on the bass. Man, this album still blows me away today. These guys, you can't hold a candle to them. They are awesome. Good stuff. If you've never listened to Yes, you got to get some Yes. All right. So back to the hard rock. This album absolutely changed my life. I started listening to their second album first, and then I got into their fourth album, had Stairway to Heaven and Black Dog and several other good songs on there. But this one, Physical Graffiti, my goodness, it's a double record. If you don't have this one in your Led Zeppelin collection, you're missing out. You got to get this one. I've got a really good copy here. I hardly ever take this one out. The other ones I have are kind of beat up. I mean, and I would say the reason that it's hard to find a good, clean copy of this album is because people just plain wear it out. It's 2 records of straight rock and roll, but it also has like rhythm and blues on there. You've got also almost some country, so all different types of music on here. Some psychedelic stuff like In the Light. I mean, I could go on and on. This is, to me, this is the best Led Zeppelin album in my opinion. Okay, I don't even think they thought that this was their best album, but I do. Love it. Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti. All right, we're coming up to the last record, and you might be a little surprised on this one, but this is kind of progressive rock and rock and roll combined together. These guys, when I first heard them, they came out with an album called 2112. Totally blew me away. I was like, who are these guys? And is that a girl singing or a guy singing? How is he hitting those notes? Geddy Lee was just like piercing the atmosphere. But that's not the album that really changed my life. Listen to Rush 2112, really started getting into him, but I was still a little on the edge. And then as time went on, I started listening to more and more Rush. Got All the World's a Stage and A Caress of Steel and some of their other records. But then when I heard this one, Rush Permanent Ways with the Spirit of the Radio starting the album off, I was totally blown away and hooked. After that, I had to go see him in concert. Went and saw him on their Moving Pictures tour. Blew me away. I'll never forget that show. I was sold out after that on Rush. Listen to Rush all the way up until they started getting kind of pop rockish in the 90s. Backed away from them because I just wasn't into that during that period of time. Now I'm able to listen to Grace Under Pressure and some of their other records like that. But I was really more into the rock and roll, and still am. But Rush Permanent Waves kind of has a mix of everything on it with Spirit of Radio, Free Will, awesome song, Jacob's Ladder. And then on side 2, you've got some really cool different types of songs, Entre Nous and Different Strings. They're not like any other rock and roll songs that you hear out there. And then finally, probably my favorite song of this album, Natural Science. I mean, what an awesome song. All right, Rush, Hemispheres, that's my number 12. And I'd like to know your opinion on these records that I pulled out today. Do you like them? Do you hate them? What are your top 12? We want to hear about it in the comments. Please reply and tell us what you think about these albums or the albums that you would have picked. All right, and I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and then we have another video coming up soon about this guy back here. In case you didn't see him, he's coming up in one of our next Just for the Record videos. All right, I'll see you there. Keep on picking.